Hello, this is Andrew Faroba, and welcome to Horn Sessions. This is the third interview in our Meet Your Teacher series, and I'm sitting here today with Hazel Dean Davis at the beautiful, awe-inspiring, and world-class Brevard Music Festival in Western North Carolina. Hazel, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm great. Enjoying being at Brevard as I have for the last 12 years. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
It is a beautiful, wonderful, wonderful place. So I'm trying to remember, when did we meet? I think it was last summer, officially. Yeah, yes. I think we had a mutual student, someone that was studying with me, and then came here and studied with you over the course of the summer. So it was really nice to get to meet you last summer, and I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better through this interview. So if it's okay with you, we're going to jump right in.
Sounds great.
So where do you teach, and how long have you been teaching there?
So I'm at Boston University, and I've been there for 2 years. This will be my second year. I also teach at Longy School of Music, which is a tiny little school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I've been there for 4 years.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about your studio size there and how many undergrad, masters, doctoral students, et cetera, do you have? Are there teaching assistantships available?
So most of my students right now are at Boston University, and we have a mix of undergrads and grads. So last year we only had 1 grad and about 6 undergrads, and this coming year we have 6 grad students and about 5 undergrads. So we'll see what each new year brings, but my hope is to build both of those studios out.
What is your teaching schedule like? Do you get to teach regularly every single week?
Yeah. So I try to be at BU 3 days a week and keep the lesson schedules pretty regular. Of course, I have to balance it with my own performance schedule. And as a freelancer, that is in flux at all times. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. And then I work with the students. So if they have conflicts that come up, like we'll reschedule. But we try to lay down like a pretty consistent weekly lesson time.
Gotcha. How many horn teachers are there at both of those schools? Is it just you at both?
At BU, it's just me. At Longy, Rachel Childers is also on faculty. And we both kind of just teach there when they have horn students.
What ensembles are there for horn players to participate in at both of those schools? We may as well cover both, right?
Sure.
Did you teach at both?
Longy is really tiny, so it's mostly chamber music. They do a little bit of chamber orchestra. BU is a much bigger university, so there's Big BU, where there are a number of campus-wide groups. And then within the College of Fine Arts, there's an symphony orchestra and a wind ensemble, lots of chamber music, horn ensembles, and that sort of thing.
Are there outside gig opportunities for students to engage in?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most exciting things about being a student in Boston is the incredible amount of music happening everywhere, at every level, like from amateur all the way up to, the BSO. There's just layers and layers and layers and layers of orchestras. So students, even undergrads, are gigging, and certainly grad students are doing a lot of professional work. And so it's kind of an on-ramp into the freelance scene, being a student.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah, as someone that got to get quite a lot in my undergrad, that was really a game changer. Just that experience that you get. So it's amazing that those opportunities are available. Well, let's talk about you for a little bit. Why did you decide to play the horn?
It's a great question. So my mom was a horn player and my aunt was a horn player. My aunt played in the Rhode Island Philharmonic until COVID. My mom played through college, and then she stopped when I was born. But I grew up with, horn being like a very important part of my family. And my mom introduced me to Dennis Brain. We used to listen to the Mozart concertos on the LP, which I swear sounds better than the CD. I don't know why, but something about that special sound. So I grew up listening to Strauss and Four Last Songs, and always from as long as I can remember, my mom pointing out the horns and thinking, wow, that is just the most magnificent sound. And knowing that I really wanted to play. I want to play the instrument that is making those sounds in Don Juan. That's what I want to do. So when I got to 5th grade and it was time to pick an instrument, horn was not offered at my little elementary school. But that did not stop me. I had to fill out a form. It was like first choice, second choice, third choice. And I put horn, horn, and horn. And so the band director was like, well, we don't do horn. And I was like, well, I'm going to do horn. And so he put me in a closet, literally, with my horn, and never came to teach me. So after the first semester, my mom came in and she was like, that's it, I'm going to teach.
Wow, that's a crazy story. Yeah, that's so funny. We have something in common there, which is I also play the horn because of my mother. I wanted to play the trumpet, and my mom essentially talked me out of it. And it had so much to do with the sound of it, the sound of the horn.
My mom just started playing again. It's really fun. So when I go home, we play duets, and just joined a community band.
So when it comes to teaching, there's so many teaching opportunities out there. I'm curious to know what drew you to teaching at the collegiate level.
Honestly, Brevard. So I started teaching at Brevard 12 years ago. I was pretty young, just a little bit older than the oldest students that come here. And at the time, I was playing the Virginia Symphony and mostly teaching like high school kids. And I got here and I just loved it. I loved teaching from the high school through the college, through the grad students. And I discovered that it was something I was pretty good at. I enjoyed working with the students and collaborating with them. And we made a lot of fast progress. And I realized, wow, this is something I love doing, it as well as playing, of course. So from there, when I moved to Boston, I started looking for more teaching opportunities and started at Longy and now at BU. And I'm in private studio as well.
Amazing. Yeah, Brevard's given so much to so many people, very much myself included. Yeah, the whole reason I play horn is because of its place.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's a really special place.
Yeah, wonderful. So I'm always curious to know, what experience do you feel shaped you the most specifically as a teacher?
Well, I have to credit my mom. You know, as I would practice as a kid, she would often yell down to the basement, "No twa-twas," or whatever she heard me. So I've got her voice in my head often when I'm teaching. But then also just, I think I'm a good self-teacher. Like I do a lot of experimenting in my own practice. And I didn't go to conservatory for undergrad. I had a great teacher, but I wasn't like in a studio culture. So I did a lot of kind of self-exploration and learning by trial and error. And like I try to be really transparent as a teacher. So as I'm teaching, I'm saying out loud what I'm thinking, what I'm hearing, and what I think about what I'm hearing, and how I think maybe we could try this, or that might make it better. And my goal in that is, with that transparency, is that student will be able to go home and self-teach as well. So yeah, I think that both the voice of my mother and my teachers, as well as like my own experimentation, has kind of led to my teaching style.
Very interesting. Yeah, I find that much of the time, some of the best teachers are the ones who had really to learn how to rely on themselves. They learned how to help themselves get to where they needed to go. It's oftentimes that self-exploration of how do I accomplish it that helps those teachers learn so much about how to help others.
Absolutely. I think grappling with my own playing and discovering things and figuring out how to meet my challenges has, absolutely made me the teacher I am. Nothing came super easy to me, except for maybe the low notes. But everything else I really felt like I had to really figure out.
Somebody listening will envy that, for sure. So there's so many things that can inspire us as teachers. I'd be curious to know, who are your horn heroes? Is there anybody in particular who inspired you? And perhaps how do you feel about that concept?
Yes, it's great. It's a great question. In this day and age, I think it is kind of dangerous to put teachers up on too big of a pedestal. I think hero worship is dangerous. That said, of course, I've been inspired by players. Like when I was in high school, hear these horn players and be like, wow. And some of the people that stand out in my memory is Dave Ohanian. I heard him play when I was at Kendall Best Horn Camp as a high schooler. And one night I heard him play like eighth horn on a horn ensemble. And I was like, wow, those low chops are incredible. And the next day he played the Gliere. And I was like, what? Who can play like that over the entire range of the horn? So Dave Ohanian definitely was an inspiration. And then really my formative years learning horn was in Boston. And Jamie Somerville was the new principal when I got there to go to school, and I studied with him in college. And his expressive color range, especially those years in the BSO, just all the different ways he could get the horn to sing, continues to this day to really be the sound that I try to emulate. So I think those are the people that have really been my most inspiring sounds.
That's amazing. Your commentary around horn heroes leads me to ask you a very specific question. In recent months, our industry has been going through a significant cultural self-examination, brought on primarily, but not exclusively, by Kara Kaiser's story about what happened to her while she was in the New York Philharmonic. As a woman, what do you feel is the current cultural state of the horn world? Are we better off now than we were in the past? And what, in your opinion, can be done to make our industry safer for future generations?
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, I think it's getting better. I don't think it's better yet. I think the publicity around Kara's story that has finally come out after years of rumor in a very small circle, having it out in public where people are talking about it even outside the music world, I think that's the key to the change. And the institutions that have for a long time chosen prestige and money and reputation over the safety of students, I think they really need to grapple with that. And that's where a lot of the change has to happen. I know there's women that are speaking out are so brave. And the support I am seeing coming out on Facebook and in the horn world for them is great. I think we have a long way to go still. And I think that we need to get rid of the code of silence. This idea that we just need to be quiet and not say anything and just go to work and pretend like we don't see it and protect ourselves. It's understandable. Our jobs are so hard to get that it feels really scary to risk them, to speak out. But speaking out is the only thing that's going to change and make it safer for our students for years to come. So I'm so grateful for these women that have spoken out publicly and for everyone who's showing their support.
It should be all of our goals to be brave enough to hold people accountable and speak out. I'd be curious to know, what do you like the most and least about being a teacher? We know everything isn't always sunshine and rainbows. So specifically as a college teacher, what's the best thing and what is just the absolute worst?
Well, the best is easy. It's guiding students to that aha moment. It's like seeing their face light up when they do something on the horn that they didn't think they could do, that they couldn't do 30 seconds ago, and then they just did it. That's the best. Hands down, the best. The students are the best. I love working with them to get to those aha moments. I like digging in for the challenges. I like all of that. There isn't really anything about the students that I don't like. I love working with students. The parts that I like least are the bureaucratic stuff, all the admin work that we have to do and don't get paid for. So, yeah, that's what's frustrating, but every minute with a student I enjoy.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this next question is my absolute favorite. What 3 words do you think your students would use to describe you as a teacher? And full disclosure, I've contacted one of your former students, and they have given me their 3 words that they would use to describe you as a teacher. So I'm going to have you go first.
Okay.
And then we'll see how close you get.
All right. Collaborative? Maybe investigative? Thoughtful? How'd I do?
That's pretty good. Yeah, collaborative, investigative, and thoughtful. Very interesting. Their words were positive.
Okay.
Efficient.
Oh, I like that.
And fun.
All right, I like those.
Yeah, your students love you. For sure.
I've heard that some people call me the horn doctor because I'm pretty good at diagnosing issues, which I find is a very nice compliment. And I do now seem to have students that come, even if they're not my regular students, if they're having a problem. I don't claim to have any magic answers, but I think I am good at problem solving and investigating. We're going to figure it out. Before you leave this hour, we're going to figure something out.
So the next question is a little more of a philosophical one to kind of dig really into your teaching. What is your primary objective when you teach?
Efficiency and a wide color range.
Can you be more specific about what you mean by
color? So like I said when I was talking about Jamie's playing, what really gives you goosebumps when you hear a great horn player is the colors that the horn can make and the range of colors. And I want students to be able to make lots of different great sounds, not just one great sound, but so they can have a different sound for Pavane versus Don Juan versus Wagner. And I want them to be able to tap in to all the technical things that they need to make those sounds so they can be as expressive as they want.
Wow. So you're trying to build almost this complete musical package.
Yes.
Amazing. Yes. I think some of my favorite players for sure have that ability to inspire regardless of the type of ensemble that they're in or the type of music that they're playing. Yeah. Whether or not it's high horn, low horn, this total package like you're talking about. Yeah. So inspiring. When you teach, I'm curious, do you follow the same curriculum for every student? And if so, why?
Definitely not. I'm a very pragmatic teacher. I rarely have a plan for how a lesson's going to go. I really try to respond to the needs of that student that day and get to the bottom of any issues they're having or encourage them on their music making. So yeah, I'm very responsive. Try not to be prescriptive. There's not just one way. I think everyone comes with a different body, and there's just that many different ways of playing the horn. And there are a lot of things that work for most people. And certainly I try to tap into those, and we start there, right, with the things that usually work. But if that doesn't work, then we're going to keep going. Okay, throw that idea out the window, and let's try this other thing, even if it's not the norm, until we find what works.
Wow, it sounds like you're very flexible.
Very flexible. Yeah.
As a teacher. I can see now how you would be able to work with so many different students and why so many students might seek you out. Yeah, very, very cool. So our next question is about equipment.
Okay.
Are you the kind of teacher where, if a freshman shows up in your studio on day one and you don't like their horn, do you just smash it against the wall? Or is it the kind of thing where you're really happy to work with somebody until a particular point? And if there is a point where you think a student needs a new mouthpiece or a new instrument, how do you go about bringing that up and starting that process?
Yeah, I am really not an equipment person. I'm like, get a decent horn and a mouthpiece and then don't think about it. Good player can make a good sound on any horn. That said, you reach a certain level where maybe you want to make some adjustments. And I'm happy to investigate that with a student. Mostly we go to Ken Pope's since I'm in Boston, and we can just sit down there for a couple hours and play a lot of horns and see what works well for that student. I'll play the horn too, test out the actual instrument, but mostly it's about finding a good fit for the student and figuring out maybe what they were frustrated with their equipment and what will help them. But really, mostly the problems are not the horn. You can really play anything if you have the right technique and efficiency and air.
Yes, I'm so jealous that you have Ken Pope. What an incredible resource. So jealous.
Yeah, it's great.
For anybody listening that is unaware, Ken Pope, just hop on the internet.
Everything you need.
Absolutely. So what are your thoughts on transposing? I think if we were to hop on Horn People on Facebook right now and you search for transposing, you would get a plethora of opinions about whether or not we should or shouldn't be doing this. So what is your take? Should we all only ever read off F parts?
Honestly, I would rather read it to have to transpose than to have to remember the key signature. And I think that's just because I've been a horn player for a long time, and those are the parts I'm used to. And if there's a key signature, I will forget, and I will play the wrong notes. If I'm transposing, no problem. I've got that down. So part of that is just what makes sense to my brain, given the way that I learned horn. So I would not want to see transposed parts for myself. Also, especially when we're looking at Mozart and classical pieces, I do think while I'm playing them about the crooks and where these notes are in the harmonic series, and that gets lost if you play a transposed part. So I think it's important to keep transposing for now. Maybe forever.
Maybe forever. Bad news, people.
Yeah.
Learn to transpose. All right. So our next question, I do like this question as well, and I always like to remind people, be honest. Mm-hmm. So do you regularly attend your students' performances, and do your students often attend your performances?
Yeah, great question. So I try to attend as many as I can. Of course, there's a lot of conflict between my students' performances and my own performances. I always attend recitals, big chamber stuff, that as long as I'm in town. But even if I'm not these days, you can just put on the live stream. So there's very little excuse to miss recitals these days. So I always try to attend my students' recitals and orchestra concerts when I can. And at Brevard, I get to hear everything every day, which is so wonderful. So it's less conflict here, which is nice. As far as my performances, I love to see my students at my performances. I always invite them, try to get them comps if they're interested in coming. It's a great way, maybe the best way to make improvement is to listen to other horn players. So not just to come to listen to me, but to listen to my colleagues, to listen to whoever I'm playing with, to listen to the chamber music that I'm playing with, hopefully that's what they're hoping to do someday. So it's good for them to come and listen. And I try as much as I can to get them work so that they get to play with me. That's like the goal. And there's nothing more satisfying as a teacher than having your students sit next to you and just rock it. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is one of my life goals, is to have a former student sit next to me in a freshman orchestra.
It's so great.
Yeah. Yeah, I really look forward to that day. It's going to happen. I believe it will.
It absolutely will.
Okay, so let's imagine that there's a student who's listening who's thinking, you know what, I really, really like Hazel. I would really like to apply to Boston University or Longy. Can you tell them what auditions are like at those schools, and what qualities do you specifically like to hear from a player in those auditions?
Sure. It's different at each school. So Longy, there's a performance element of the audition. There's also an essay element. They're interested in students who want to make a social justice impact with their music making. So they're looking for a slightly different player than BU, which is more geared towards straight performance. At BU, I like to run the auditions like a mini lesson. You know, I'll have a student come in, start off kind of formal. They'll play some stuff for me. But then I like to have some time where I'm doing some teaching and they're responding, because it's also their chance to audition me. If they can have a trial lesson, that's even better. But that doesn't work for everyone's schedule. So sometimes this is all we have. Is these 15, 20 minutes. And so I want for them to have an opportunity to see what it's like to work with me, see if it's a good match from both sides. Things I'm looking for: music making. I'm looking for a willingness to experiment, a fearless approach to learning. Like, I'm looking for a student that really is committed to being their best. Of course, I look at fundamentals. I love to see good fundamentals. Who doesn't? But that's not disqualifying. Everyone comes from different places and have had different experiences and opportunities. So when I'm looking at fundamentals, I'm mostly looking to see where I would start, like where the holes are in the student's background that maybe we could patch up really quick first thing and get them on track.
So let's say that we've got a student that's all in, whether or not that's because they know that they're going to BU and they're going to study with you, or just going to any music school at all. And to try and help them, is there a subject or aspect of playing that you feel like your incoming freshmen are most deficient in?
I mean, I think it's probably low playing and soft play, kind of classic. This just comes from the best players tend to get put on first horn in their youth orchestras and in band at school. So they still get to play a lot of low horn. That's just the truth. And as soon as they get an opportunity, then they'll improve. So a lot of it just comes with the amount of time they've spent on the different ranges. And then soft playing, you know, it's fun to play loud. And you have to really usually be encouraged to practice soft playing. So that tends not to happen until you come to a university, you know, and really start to dig into the fundamentals of that.
Phenomenal advice and insight. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen a shocked face when I tell students that you're supposed to know how to read bass clef. Yes, that is an eye-opener for most people. In fact, some people may have just had a little eyebrow raise as they were listening. Yes, horn players should be able to read in bass clef.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
It's better than having to read all those ledger lines.
Yes. So let's pivot to a very, very important topic, which is student health. I think we both know that walking the path to becoming a professional musician is an arduous one. It's difficult, it's inherently challenging, well worth it, but tough. How do you help your students to avoid or deal with burnout?
So I love playing the horn, and I want my students to love playing the horn. So we do a lot of fun playing in studio and at lessons. We play a lot of duets, play a lot of quartets. I think if students can continue to love playing, it's less arduous, the path. So I always try to prioritize that. So lots of fun playing, but also like lots of laughter and like not taking ourselves too seriously. We're playing the horn, right? This is not brain surgery. Yes, it's a difficult path and it's hard to get a job and all of that. But if we can remain committed to the music making and the reasons why we chose this path, then wherever we end up, we'll be satisfied. So I think prioritizing that, the fun of it and the joy of making music really helps with burnout.
Yeah, very much agree. I think every teacher knows that sometimes your music lessons turn into therapy sessions.
Yes.
I don't think there's ever been a teacher that hasn't had to, ride that line. And I could see how you would be a very comfortable teacher in that way with going into lessons with you, knowing that you'll be supported. And then if you really need somebody, that you would be there.
Absolutely. Yeah. If the lesson involves no horn that's okay. We can talk. It's just whatever the student needs. We always try to get horn playing because that's the most fun. I also think it's really important to have a positive studio culture. Of course, the ultimate goal is to sound good in all the ranges, but it's the environment within which you're learning.
While we're on the subject of student health, do you encourage / support your students to engage in other interests outside of music? Why or why not?
Absolutely. So, I went to Harvard. I got an undergrad degree in anthropology, even though I knew from the time I was 16 that I wanted to play horn professionally. I went to Harvard in spite of that. I loved it. The music scene at Harvard was incredible. It was full of people like me who just loved to play. Many who are now professional, including some of my colleagues here at Brevard. While playing all of this music, I was also able to take really interesting courses in other fields, not just anthropology, of which I took a number of courses, but astrophysics or computer science. Just being able to kind of tiptoe into these other fields and just get a taste. I'm not using them in my daily life. I'm not getting paid to work in these fields, but it's just interesting and inspiring to intellectually think about them and talk about them and have some idea of what you're reading when you're reading something about NASA or the latest human evolution finding or whatever. I think it's really satisfying and important to have interests outside of just music. And that can include a degree like I did and like many of my BU students do. BU has a great double degree program where you can get a degree in horn performance and computer science, for example, in which you're totally immersed in both the entire time. Or you're just taking classes because you find them interesting, even if you're not getting a degree in them. And those interests and the knowledge that you gain will stay with you and continue to bring you satisfaction into your adulthood. So I encourage students to double degree. I think it's great. It's also, of course, provides a backup, which is important. It's hard. As you said, it's a hard path to become a professional musician. And it can be hard financially, especially in a city that is expensive. I don't think it's a cop-out to get a double degree at all. I don't think you have to think of it as you're not going 100% in on horn. You can do both and be 100% in, I promise. And it's nice to have that degree. You never know when you'll need it or want it. And I don't think you lose anything by doing it. So it maybe takes a little bit of extra effort in your college years, but it's well worth it.
Yes, very, very wise. Yeah, I do a lot of encouraging of my own students. Yeah. If you have it all any other interest or love or passion in life, it's okay.
It's more than okay. Yeah, it's okay and it's great.
Yes.
You'll be a more interesting person because of it.
Yes. As someone who didn't double major, trust Hazel. She says it's great, do it. Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to your original answer to the question, because I think when I asked this question about these interests outside of music, my natural inclination is to go directly to physical things. I always think about, if I'm going to balance out my musical life, I'm going to do it by running, or for me, mountain biking, or, some sort of physical interest. And you're the first person that I've ever talked to who immediately answered it with an intellectual interest.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is fascinating to me, that you don't need to just love learning about music. You can also love learning about this other subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perhaps that's why I didn't double major.
I do the other stuff too. I love running and hiking, and I'm also a mother. So there's a lot of juggling and balance, but it can be done.
If you're looking for a teacher who understands how to get the most out of life, I think you found who you're looking for. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, having to do with student health. Do you have any thoughts on or experience with playing injuries? How do you guide your students to recovery?
Yeah, it's so important. I think in general, less is more when you're dealing with an injury. So I've had plenty of, I wouldn't go as far as to call them injuries, but you wake up and you feel terrible, and maybe the terrible feeling lasts for more than just a practice session, and you get worried and you're like, uh-oh. And the smart way to respond to that is not to just keep trying maybe it will get better if I keep pounding away at this exercise. And that's hard for me. I like to go get it, whatever it is. So I've had to learn to step back when I feel on the edge of what could be an injury. And so I try to watch out for my students, look for signs of overuse, look for signs that they're pushing too hard, and encourage them to practice off the horn. There's lots of ways you can practice off the horn with your air, singing, listening, fingering while listening. It's so many options.
Score study.
Score study, absolutely. Or just, sometimes you just need to go for a run and clear your head. And that's also healthy. Yeah, I think paying attention to your body, listening to the signs, and when you feel concerning symptoms, whether it's like dull face, that kind of dead chops, or sharp pains or anything like that, that you take a step back and take it easy for a couple of days. Don't push it, and feel like it's okay to say to your colleagues or your director, I need to take some time. I'm going to play quieter today, or I'm going to get a sub for a rehearsal. Take care of yourself. It's important.
Very, very important. So we're getting close to the end of our interview here. I've got a few final questions for you. If every student could only learn one thing from you, what would you want it to be?
I think there's two things. If horn ever stops being fun, go do something else. And be obsessed with getting better forever.
Wow. That's a very powerful message for sure. Yeah. Last question. Is there anything you typically say to those graduating from your studio before they leave? Do you give advice or encouragement?
Play duets. Find somebody who loves to play horn and play duets all the time. It's the best way to get better at horn, to get better at playing it as a section, to get better at intonation, rhythm, sight reading, you name it. Play duets. It's also really fun.
So let's say we have a listener that has absolutely loved this interview. They know that they want to work with you, want to get in touch with you, or perhaps they have a question about something that you said. What would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Website, hazeldeandavis.com. There's contact information there, my email. I think it's also probably on the BU website. Absolutely reach out, send me an email. I love hearing from prospective students, love setting up trial lessons. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you so much for doing this, Hazel. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's better. Oh, goodness. Woo.